The house was peaceful during the day. Sunlight streamed through the windows, filling the rooms with warmth. Their dog, Max, would lounge lazily on the living room rug, tail thumping happily whenever someone walked by. He was gentle, well-trained, and had always been the perfect family pet. Their 1-year-old son, Oliver, loved him, often reaching out to grab his fur with tiny fingers, giggling as Max licked his hands. Everything felt normal. But at night, everything changed. It started subtly. Max would perk up as soon as they put Oliver down in his crib. His ears would twitch, and his head would lift, eyes fixating on the nursery door. At first, it was just a low growl, barely audible over the hum of the baby monitor. The first few times, they assumed he had heard a noise from outside, a passing car, a neighbor's dog, or the wind rattling the fence. They reassured him, patted his head, and told him to settle down. But Max wouldn't relax. Every night, at almost the exact same time, he would position himself near the nursery door, muscles tense, growling low in his throat. Sometimes he would sit completely still, staring into the dimly lit room as if waiting for something to move. Other nights, his tail would tuck between his legs, and he would whimper softly, scratching at the floor with restless paws. Then Oliver started waking up. At first, it was just fussing, stirring in his crib, whimpering like he was having a bad dream. But soon, the cries became full-blown screams. The first night it happened, Rachel rushed in, expecting to find him tangled in his blankets or maybe teething. But Oliver was sitting upright, eyes wide, and darting around the dark room, his little hands clutching the crib railing. "Shoo, baby, you're okay," Rachel cooed, lifting him into her arms. His tiny body trembled against her, and she felt his heart pounding. Max stood frozen in the doorway, staring into the nursery, his growl barely audible but continuous. Rachel glanced around the room uneasily, but nothing seemed out of place. The next morning, she mentioned it to her husband, Adam. "Maybe he's afraid of the dark," she suggested, bouncing Oliver on her hip. Adam shook his head. "He's too young to be scared of the dark. It's probably just a sleep regression." Rachel nodded, but a nagging feeling lingered. That night, the same thing happened. The moment they placed Oliver in his crib and turned off the light, Max tensed. He didn't leave his usual spot near the nursery door, and at the exact same time, he began growling again. This time, Rachel sat with him, rubbing his head to calm him down, but his eyes remained locked on a single point in the room. Then, Oliver screamed. Rachel jumped up and rushed to the crib, flicking on the light. Oliver was standing again, gripping the railing, his tear-streaked face looking toward the closet. Max let out a sharp bark, stepping into the room, his body tense. Rachel's pulse quickened. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, but her own voice wavered. Adam walked in, rubbing his eyes. "Again?" Rachel nodded. Adam sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe he's having nightmares." "Baby's dream, right?" Rachel exhaled, trying to shake the growing unease. "Yeah, I guess." Over the next few nights, Max's behavior escalated. He stopped sleeping in their room and instead insisted on staying outside the nursery. The growling turned into whining, pacing, and scratching at the wooden floor like he was trying to dig his way inside. Then came the barking. One night, at exactly 3:12 a.m., Rachel bolted upright in bed at the sound of Max's frantic barking. It wasn't his usual warning bark when he heard something outside. This was different, more urgent, almost panicked. She shoved the blankets off and rushed down the hall, Adam close behind. As soon as she stepped into the nursery, she felt it, the air was different. Cold. Oliver was awake, sitting up in his crib, silent this time, just staring toward the closet. Max stood at the foot of the crib, snarling at the closed closet door. His teeth bared, the fur along his back raised. His stance was defensive, protective, ready to fight something. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. She reached for the light switch with shaky fingers, illuminating the room in a soft yellow glow. Nothing was there. The closet door was shut. The air, though, it still felt wrong. Adam sighed, rubbing his face. "Rachel, there's nothing." Max lunged at the door. Rachel let out a small scream as the dog threw himself forward, scratching and barking as if something were inside. Adam rushed forward, yanking open the closet door, empty. Max hesitated, his growl softening. He sniffed the air inside the closet, but then he let out a soft whimper and backed away. Rachel's heart pounded. "Adam, what if he's sensing something we can't?" Adam exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Ratch, come on. It's just..." Another sharp bark from Max cut him off. The dog hadn't taken his eyes off the closet. Rachel swallowed hard. Something wasn't right. Rachel and Adam tried everything. At first, they assumed Max's behavior was just a phase. Maybe he was adjusting to changes in Oliver's sleep schedule or reacting to some outside noise they couldn't hear. But no matter what they did, nothing stopped him. They moved Max's bed to the farthest part of the house, thinking maybe if he slept somewhere else, he wouldn't feel the need to guard the nursery. But at night, without fail, he returned, lying just outside Oliver's door, his body stiff and alert. When they closed the door, hoping to create some separation, he scratched at it relentlessly, whimpering and whining until they let him back in. Rachel even tried keeping a lamp on in the nursery, thinking that maybe shadows were triggering Max's instincts. But he didn't stop growling. If anything, he only seemed more on edge. It wasn't just growling anymore. He had started pacing outside the door, his nails clicking against the hardwood floor. And then, Oliver started changing too. Rachel noticed it first. He was always such a happy, energetic baby, full of giggles and curiosity. But lately, he had become restless. He tossed and turned in his crib, waking up tired and cranky, as if he hadn't slept at all. Some nights, Rachel would wake up to the sound of soft whimpers coming from the baby monitor. She would rush in to check on him, expecting him to be tangled in his blankets or needing a diaper change. But instead, she would find him sitting up in his crib, wide-eyed, staring into the dark corner of the room. One night, she walked in to soothe him and saw something that made her blood run cold. Oliver's small hand lifted, and he pointed into the shadows near the closet. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. She followed his tiny finger, staring into the darkness, waiting for her eyes to adjust. The closet door was slightly ajar, but she had no memory of leaving it open. A chill crawled down her spine. She quickly scooped Oliver up and held him tightly against her chest. Max, who had been sitting beside the crib, let out a low growl, his eyes locked on the same corner. Rachel turned on the nightlight, hoping the soft glow would bring her some comfort. But even in the dim light, Oliver's eyes stayed fixed on that spot. By morning, Rachel was exhausted. She told Adam about it over breakfast, her voice tight with unease. "Maybe he's just having nightmares," Adam suggested, stirring his coffee. Rachel shook her head. "Adam, he was pointing at something. Not just looking. Pointing." Adam exhaled and ran a hand through his hair. "Kids do weird things. It doesn't mean anything." Rachel bit her lip, unsure. It felt like something. That night, she decided to keep the baby monitor volume up, just in case. It was one of those high-tech ones with a clear sound system, picking up even the smallest noises. Usually, it gave Rachel peace of mind, allowing her to hear Oliver's soft breathing in the middle of the night. But tonight, it only made things worse. It was just past midnight when she heard it. A whisper. Rachel's eyes shot open. She turned the volume up, pressing the monitor closer to her ear. The whisper was faint, almost too soft to make out. Then came the scratching. A slow, deliberate sound, like nails dragging across wood. Rachel's pulse pounded. The baby monitor only picked up inside sounds. This wasn't coming from outside the house. It was coming from Oliver's room. Then, something even worse. A hum. Soft. Gentle. Like someone humming a lullaby. Rachel bolted upright, heart racing. Oliver couldn't hum. He was barely forming words. Without thinking, she jumped out of bed and sprinted down the hall. Max was already there, standing guard outside the nursery door, his entire body rigid. His ears were back, his teeth slightly bared. Rachel hesitated only for a second before throwing the door open. Oliver was lying in his crib, still. His chest rose and fell in slow, steady breaths. Rachel flicked on the light and scanned the room. The closet door was slightly open again. She rushed to the crib and placed a trembling hand on Oliver's back. He was warm. Safe. Still asleep. She grabbed the baby monitor from the dresser and checked the screen. The room looked normal. No movement. But the humming had stopped the second she entered. Rachel didn't sleep after that. The next morning, she told Adam everything, Oliver's pointing, the noises on the monitor, the whispering. Adam sighed. Ratch, you're exhausted. You haven't slept properly in weeks. Maybe you imagine the sounds. I know what I heard, Rachel snapped. Max knows it too. Look at him. Max was lying by Oliver's crib, eyes half open, ears twitching. Even during the day, he refused to leave the nursery now. Adam ran a hand over his face. Okay, so let's say something is happening. What do you think it is? A ghost? Rachel exhaled sharply. I don't know. But I do know our dog doesn't act like this for no reason. And I do know our son pointed at something in that room. And I do know that the baby monitor. Okay. Adam held up his hands in surrender. Rachel took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. I don't care what it is, Adam. I need to know what's happening in that room. Adam was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. Let's prove it. I'll set up a camera tonight. We'll record the nursery and see if anything actually happens. Rachel swallowed. She wasn't sure if she wanted to see what the footage would reveal. That night, Adam positioned the camera on the bookshelf, angled toward Oliver's crib and the closet. There. Now, we can stop freaking ourselves out and see that it's just Max being overprotective. Rachel still wasn't convinced. They turned off the lights. Max, as usual, took his place just outside the nursery, his breathing slow and steady, waiting. As Rachel lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she found herself dreading the morning. What if the camera proved something was there all along? The next morning, Rachel was already awake when the sun peeked through the bedroom curtains. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, the image of Oliver pointing at the dark corner of the room flashed in her mind. The eerie humming from the baby monitor, the scratching sounds, her mind kept replaying them like a nightmare she couldn't escape. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the small camera Adam had set up in Oliver's nursery the night before. Part of her didn't want to watch the footage. If it showed nothing, she'd feel like she was losing her mind. But if it showed something... She shook Adam awake. Come on, she whispered, nudging him. We have to check the footage. Adam groaned, rubbing his eyes. Ratch, it's 6 a.m. I don't care. She grabbed the camera and the laptop, her hands shaking slightly as she inserted the memory card. Max, who had been lying just outside Oliver's nursery all night, stood up the moment Rachel moved. His eyes were tired, his ears still alert. He hadn't slept either. He padded over to her, sitting by her feet as if he knew what was coming. Adam sighed and sat beside her, rubbing a hand over his face. All right. Let's prove there's nothing going on. Rachel ignored him and pressed play. For the first few hours, nothing happened. The nursery was still, lit only by the faint glow of the nightlight. The crib was positioned in the middle of the room, the small bookshelf and rocking chair tucked into their usual places. Oliver lay peacefully, shifting slightly in his sleep, his tiny chest rising and falling. Max was visible in the hallway, just outside the nursery, lying down with his head resting on his paws. Rachel fast-forwarded through the footage, her fingers tense on the keyboard. 1 a.m. 2 a.m. Everything looked normal. Then, at exactly 3:13 a.m., Max lifted his head. Rachel's breath hitched. On the screen, Max's ears stood up straight, his body tensing. He sniffed the air once, then abruptly stood up. Adam leaned in closer to the laptop. "Okay, that's weird." Rachel didn't respond. On the footage, Oliver stirred in his crib. He rolled onto his back, shifting restlessly. Then it happened. Rachel's stomach turned to ice. A shadow moved. It wasn't coming from the window. It wasn't from the nightlight. It wasn't them. It was inside the nursery. A dark shape stretched across the floor near the crib, lingering for only a few seconds before it disappeared. Rachel's pulse pounded in her ears. Adam sat up straighter, his face pale. What the hell was that? Rachel pressed pause, then slowly rewound. She played it again, watching as the shadow moved on its own. On the screen, Max crept forward, his body stiff, staring directly at the closet. Rachel hadn't noticed it before, but the closet door was slightly open. She knew for a fact they had closed it when they put Oliver to bed. The dog's posture changed. His lips curled back, revealing his teeth, and his tail lowered between his legs, a sign of fear, not aggression. His ears twitched, and then he let out a low, deep growl. Rachel's hands trembled as she watched Oliver shift again in his crib. Then, her heart stopped. Oliver stopped breathing. For 5 full seconds, his tiny chest didn't rise. Rachel gasped, slapping a hand over her mouth. "Oh my God." Adam stiffened beside her. "Pause it." Rachel did, her hand shaking as she froze the screen. Oliver lay still, unmoving. Rachel swallowed the lump in her throat and pressed play again. A second later, Oliver suddenly gasped and turned his head toward the closet. The closet door creaked open. Rachel's entire body tensed. She felt like she was going to be sick. Then Max lunged. On the screen, the dog threw himself forward, barking and snarling. His paws skidded on the hardwood floor as he launched himself toward the closet, snapping at the air. His teeth bared, his body moving as if attacking something invisible. The camera glitched. Static filled the screen. The image cut out for 3 full seconds. Rachel's breath came in shallow gasps. Adam's hand clenched into a fist against his leg. The footage resumed. Max stood in the middle of the room, his chest heaving, his fur bristled, still staring at the closet. Rachel's stomach turned. The closet door was wide open. Rachel exhaled sharply. Her mind raced. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe they were seeing things. She rewound the footage again, playing it back in slow motion. But no. It happened the same way every time. 3:13 a.m. The shadow. The closet door opening. Oliver stopping breathing. And Max, lunging at something completely invisible. Rachel felt sick. "Adam, tell me you see this too." Adam ran a shaky hand through his hair. "I see it." She turned to him, eyes wild. "So what the hell was it?" Adam didn't answer. Rachel looked back at the screen, at the final image, the last recorded moment before the footage ended. Max, standing protectively in front of Oliver's crib, still staring into the open closet. Rachel's skin prickled. The closet was empty. But what if it wasn't? Rachel's hands shook as she shut the laptop. The room felt colder than before, as if watching the footage had somehow disturbed something unseen. She turned to Adam, expecting him to say something, anything, but he just stared at the frozen image on the screen, where Max stood protectively in front of Oliver's crib, still staring into the open closet. "We need to figure out what's going on," Rachel whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Adam finally looked at her, his expression unreadable. "How?" Rachel hesitated, but she already knew the answer. "We start with the house." They had moved in just over a year ago when Rachel was pregnant with Oliver. It was an older house, but it had character, a cozy charm that made it feel like home the moment they walked through the door. They had done the usual checks before buying: foundation, plumbing, wiring, But now, Rachel wondered what they hadn't checked. Adam grabbed his laptop, and together, they started searching. It didn't take long before Rachel found something disturbing. Their house had a history. 15 years ago, a family had lived there, a couple with a young child. A little boy. Rachel's chest tightened as she read further. The child had gone missing. One night, the parents had put their son to bed, just like they did every night. When they woke up the next morning, he was gone. No forced entry. No signs of struggle. His bedroom window had been locked from the inside. The case had never been solved. Rachel's breath came in shallow gasps. Adam, a little boy, used to live here. Adam frowned. So? That doesn't mean. He went missing. That shut him up. Rachel scrolled further, searching for anything else, anything that could explain why their child, Oliver, was having the same strange experiences. Then she found it. The mother of the missing child had told police something unsettling. Her son had been scared of his closet. Rachel's stomach flipped. She turned to Adam, gripping his wrist. It's the same room, Adam. The same age. In that closet, she swallowed hard. He told his mom there was someone inside it. Adam sat back, rubbing a hand over his face. This has to be a coincidence. Rachel glared at him. You saw the footage. That door opened by itself. Adam was silent. Rachel closed the laptop, her heart racing. We need help. Adam scoffed. From who? A priest? Rachel wasn't sure. But she knew they couldn't ignore this. That night, Rachel barely slept. Every creak, every shift of the house made her stomach knot. Max stayed in the nursery, refusing to leave Oliver's side. The next morning, Rachel made a decision. She called a paranormal investigator. The man arrived later that day, a quiet, serious-looking guy in his mid-40s. He introduced himself as Daniel and didn't waste time with small talk. You said your dog has been reacting to the nursery, he asked as he stepped inside. Rachel nodded. Every night. Daniel knelt and reached a hand out to Max. The dog didn't growl, but he didn't wag his tail either. He just watched. He's protective, Daniel noted. That's a good sign. Rachel led him to the nursery. Daniel stepped inside, his eyes scanning the walls, the furniture, the ceiling. He pulled out a small device that began emitting a faint static hum. What is that? Adam asked, arms crossed. An EMF detector, Daniel replied. Measures electromagnetic fields. Spirits, if they're here, tend to give off high readings. Rachel's skin prickled as the device buzzed louder the closer Daniel got to the closet. He stopped in front of it, tilting his head. It's strongest here. Rachel held Oliver closer. What does that mean? Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he opened the closet. The door creaked, revealing the neatly arranged shelves inside. Nothing unusual. Rachel let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Maybe this was all. Daniel knocked on the back wall. Rachel frowned. What are you? Hollow. Rachel froze. Daniel turned to look at them. This wall isn't solid. Rachel's stomach twisted. What are you saying? Adam's eyes darkened. There's something behind it. Daniel pressed his palm against the wooden paneling, feeling along the edges. Then, with a firm push, a hidden door popped open. Rachel gasped. Behind the closet wall was a small, dark crawl space. Dust covered the floor, and the air smelled stale, like it had been untouched for years. Rachel felt lightheaded. Had this been here the whole time? Adam took a step closer, peering inside. Oh my God. Daniel flicked on a flashlight, shining it inside. The beam of light landed on something that made Rachel's skin crawl. A small stuffed bear. It sat in the middle of the crawl space, old and covered in dust. Forgotten. Rachel's breath hitched. Adam swallowed. You don't think? Daniel exhaled. I think whoever lived here before you knew about this. And I think your dog has been trying to warn you about it. Rachel stared at the bear. A wave of nausea rolled through her. What if, she whispered, what if the boy who went missing? She couldn't finish the sentence. Adam turned away, rubbing his face. This can't be real. Rachel felt it now. That heavy presence. The same coldness she had felt every time she entered the nursery at night. Max growled low in his throat. Daniel sighed. There's something here. Whether it's a spirit or something worse, you need to deal with it. Rachel shuddered. How? Daniel studied the crawl space for a moment before turning back to them. You can bless the house, seal this off, and hope it stops. But if it's attached to the place... Rachel's throat was dry. Then what? Daniel's face was grim. Then you need to leave. Rachel's knees felt weak. Adam shook his head. No. This is our home. We can't just... Daniel gave him a knowing look. Then prepared to live with it. Rachel felt Oliver shift in her arms. He was awake now, staring toward the closet. Rachel's heart pounded as his small lips parted, his voice barely above a whisper. He's still here. Rachel nearly dropped him. Daniel's face darkened. You don't have much time. Rachel turned to Adam, her entire body trembling. How much danger were they really in? Rachel and Adam barely spoke the rest of the day. Every glance at the nursery sent a chill through Rachel's body. The hidden crawl space, the stuffed bear, Oliver's whispered words, he's still here, it was too much. Adam had insisted on sealing the crawl space immediately, but Rachel had stopped him. We need to see what happens tonight, she had said, her voice shaking. We need to know what we're dealing with. Adam had reluctantly agreed, though Rachel could tell he hated the idea. That evening, he set up 2 cameras, one facing the crib and closet, the other in the hallway, capturing Max's behavior outside the nursery. This is the last time, Adam muttered as he adjusted the second camera. After this, we're sealing that damn wall. Rachel nodded, holding Oliver close. She just wanted this nightmare to be over. That night, everything escalated. At exactly 3:13 a.m., Max lost it. Rachel and Adam shot awake as the dog's furious barking echoed through the house. It wasn't like before, this was different. This was violent. Rachel scrambled out of bed, heart pounding. Max was at the nursery door, teeth bared, his entire body rigid with tension. His barking was relentless, his growls deeper than Rachel had ever heard before. Then, the sound started. A slow, dragging noise. It came from inside the walls. Rachel froze. Adam cursed under his breath, grabbing a flashlight. What the hell is that? The noise grew louder, like something shifting within the walls, pushing against the wood. Rachel grabbed Adam's arm. It's coming from behind the closet. A sudden thud made them both jump. Oliver screamed from inside the nursery. Rachel shoved past Adam, throwing the door open. The room was freezing. Oliver was sitting up in his crib, crying, his tiny hands clenched into fists. His eyes darted toward the closet. Max lunged, barking at something they couldn't see. Then, the lights flickered. Rachel gasped as a shadow moved across the room. It wasn't a trick of the light. It wasn't their imagination. Something was there. Max lunged at thin air, snapping and growling, his paws skidding across the hardwood floor. Rachel screamed as the closet door slammed open on its own. Oliver's cries grew louder, his body shaking as he pressed himself against the crib rails. Adam bolted for the closet, yanking the door open completely. The walls shuddered. Max snarled, biting at nothing. And then, silence. The lights stopped flickering. The air stilled. The only sound was Rachel's ragged breathing and Oliver's hiccuping sobs. Max remained where he was, his chest heaving, his eyes locked on the empty space in front of the closet. His tail was stiff, his ears back, his body still ready to attack. Rachel's hands were shaking as she picked up Oliver, holding him tightly. "Adam," she whispered, "what just happened?" Adam stood frozen, staring into the closet. Rachel followed his gaze, and felt her stomach drop. The back panel of the crawl space was wide open. Adam clenched his jaw, stepping forward. He raised his flashlight, shining it inside. For a second, nothing happened. Then, movement. Rachel barely had time to scream before a figure lunged from the darkness. Adam staggered back, nearly dropping the flashlight. The beam of light flickered over a man, thin, pale, eyes wide and wild, crawling out of the hidden passage. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. The man, whoever he was, had been living inside their walls. Max lunged. The man let out a piercing scream as Max tackled him to the floor, teeth snapping. Adam recovered quickly, grabbing the man by his arms and shoving him onto his stomach. "Call the police!" Adam barked. Rachel fumbled for her phone, hands trembling so violently she nearly dropped it. The man thrashed, his limbs weak but frantic. "I was just watching," he muttered, his voice cracked and dry. "I was just watching the baby." Rachel's stomach twisted. She felt sick. Sirens filled the air within minutes. The police stormed into the house, pulling the man away from the nursery floor, handcuffing him. He didn't fight. He just kept laughing. Rachel couldn't stop shaking as an officer approached her. "We've been looking for him," he said grimly. "This isn't the first house he's broken into." Rachel tightened her grip on Oliver. "How long?" The officer hesitated. "We don't know. But given the setup inside that crawl space, a while." Rachel nearly collapsed. She barely registered the rest of what happened. The police searched the crawl space, finding old blankets, a few empty water bottles, a hole carved into the wall, one that looked straight into the nursery. Rachel felt bile rise in her throat. The officer gave her a sympathetic look. "Your dog probably saved your son's life tonight." Rachel looked at Max, who was still standing guard by the crib. His eyes followed the police as they dragged the man away, his body tense, his breathing slow and deep. Rachel fell to her knees and pulled him close, burying her face in his fur. "Good boy," she whispered. "You're the best boy." Max exhaled heavily and finally, relaxed. Rachel held Oliver and Max close, whispering soft thanks. She didn't even want to think about what could have happened if they hadn't listened. Max had known all along. And he had never stopped protecting them.